Hi, this is Laura Staley, and I'm back with another video about Excel. Now, today we are going to talk about dates in Excel. And when I first started this topic, I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, and then finally realized that I needed to split it into two different videos. And here's the reason why, because it was going to be a monstrously long video. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the basics of dates in Excel, using them, manipulating them, mainly how they apply to formulas and functions so that you can use them to create data that will be useful to you in your spreadsheets. So today, that is what I'm going to talk about. Next will be the date functions that will help you automate some of your calculations in Excel that use dates. So look for that next. Okay, so let's get started. Now, dates have to be one of the things that frustrate people the most in Excel. And a lot of that stems from them not knowing about dates and how Excel uses them, creates them, all that kind of thing. So let me explain. Back in the midst of Excel time, when Microsoft was creating Excel, there was another spreadsheet program called Lotus 123 that dominated the market. And Excel was going after their market share. And so they wanted to be able to match Lotus's dates and the way they use them so that when people switched over from Lotus to Excel, they could bring their spreadsheets with them and convert them over to Excel. Well, Lotus used this system where they went back to 1900, January 1st, 1900, and assigned a serial number to each date since then. So January 1st, 1900 was 1, January 2nd, 1900 was 2, and so on and so forth. And every single day since then, they just added 1 to these date serial numbers. And so when you type a date into Excel, it formats the number that it's assigned the date that you type in, like a date that you recognize, but behind it is the serial number. Okay, so does that make sense? Not do you agree with it, but do you understand what I'm saying? So when you go to use dates in formulas and functions in Excel, you are actually using that serial number to get the results. And then the results may be formatted as a date or a number, depending on what those results represent. So let me show you a couple of things that will help make this make more sense. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that if you ever type in a date and you want it to show up as a date, you need to format it as a date. If it's formatted as general or number, it's going to show up as that serial number. And I've seen people who they type in a date and it's this number like 43679 or something like that. And they're like, where's my date? Well, that's the serial number. And the cell just isn't formatted as a date. So let me show you here. Let me make this a little bigger so you can see. Okay, so I have a column of dates here, and each one of them is formatted as a date. Here is the corresponding serial number behind it. So I've got January 1st, 1900, which is when it all started, and that's 1. January 2nd, 1900 is 2. 2/1, 1900, so February 1st, 1900, that's 32. Now notice I have these hashtags or number signs. That is probably the most common error you are going to see in Excel. And all it means is that the date that is in the number in the cell, in this case, it's a number formatted as a date, is too wide to appear in the cell. So all that means is I have to come up here between A and B and make this a little bit wider. Okay, there we go. And then September 15th, 1963, that serial number is 23,269. February 14th, 2016, Valentine's Day of that year was 42,414. And May 30th of 2020, which is coming up soon, is 43,981. Okay, so when I type in a date, and I can type it in that so that it looks like a date that Excel recognizes. So there are a bunch of different formats. I could type in, let's see, what is today? It is May 26th, 2020. And I hit enter. Now notice that it automatically aligns that date to the right. That means it's a number. If you remember, Excel aligns text to the left, numbers to the right. So that's how I know it's a number formatted as a date. Now, the default formatting for this is like this. So if I want to change the formatting, I can go into the number dialog box and go to date. And here are the different formats that Excel has for dates. And so I can choose Wednesday. Okay, and again, it's too wide to appear in the column, so I make it wider, and there's my date. Okay, does that make sense? Or I could type in 5/26, let's see, 20, 20, and hit enter, and there it is. It formats it that way. Okay, so I could keep going and typing in your different formats, but if it's a generally accepted date format, Excel should recognize it. And if it doesn't format it the way you want, you can always go up to the formatting and format it as a date. Now, notice that you have dates. If I click on the down arrow, I've got short date, I've got long date. So if I wanted to change this to the short date, I could do it that way. Okay, but the key is that I can know it's a number and format it as a date because it's aligned to the right. Okay, so does that make sense so far? Okay, now, one of the things to think about though is sometimes people put dates in headings. So for example, they say, they have like headings that are 131, 228, 331, 430, and so on. In that case, Excel will automatically format those as numbers because they're dates. But if you have dates as headings, you probably want to format those as text so that Excel doesn't sweep those up in some automatic formatting or in helping you out in choosing a range, because headings are usually text and Excel assumes that headings are text. So sometimes if there's a number in a heading, it can mess Excel up. Now, the quickest way to do that is to simply type in a single quote mark. In a lot of my videos, I'll talk about how you have to enclose things in functions in double quotation marks. Well, this is single quotation marks. So if I type in a single quotation mark and then type in May 26, 2020 and hit enter, notice it's formatted to the left, which means it's text. Okay, so if you want to make a date text, the quickest way to do that is to type a single quotation mark and then whatever it is that follows, and it will automatically make it text. The thing to realize though is if I do that, I cannot use this cell in a formula or function. It will not work because the serial number associated with that date is not behind that date. It's not formatted as a number. Okay, so be sure if you do this that you are not going to want to use that cell in a function or formula. Okay, clear as mud so far? Okay, I hope so. Okay, so that is about typing in dates. Now, once you understand this and you understand about formatting dates as a number format, as a category of number formatting, the thing that that automatically leads to is that, well, if they're a number, then you can use them in formulas and functions. And in the next video, I'm going to cover the functions that you can use. But in this video, I'm going to cover some basic formulas. You may have some dates and you just want to calculate something based on a date in your spreadsheet, and a simple formula works just fine. Well, you can do that fairly easily. So let me scroll over here. And we're going to go over two examples. The first one is adding days to dates, and the second one is subtracting dates from other dates. So actually, let me change this. We're adding days to dates. Okay, so that is what we're going to do here. Okay, now I have a date here in this column. There are various dates that represent something. And then there are the days plus or minus that I want to calculate. Okay, so let me give you some examples. You are working on a project at work and you are starting on such and such a date and you want to get it done in 10 days. That is this first line here. So January 1st, 2020, you want to know what 10 days is out? Here's the formula. Equals D4 plus E4. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this date and add 10. So I'm going to type in equal. I'm going to click on my date. I'm going to type in a plus sign, and I'm going to type in the number of plus or minus days, and I'm going to hit enter. And there is my result. The column isn't wide enough. Okay, so there's my date. And then I've automatically formatted this next column to show you the serial number, just so you can see the serial number that's behind it. You probably aren't going to do this on your own spreadsheets, but I want you to see that this is the formatted version and this is the actual data that is behind it. Okay? Okay, so then the next scenario, you have a date of February 20th, 2020, but you want to know what 5 days before that is. So let's say you have to get something done, but 5 days before it, you have to do something in preparation. So in this case, I'm going to add a negative number. Okay, now you can also do the same thing over here with subtraction, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But you can, if you add positive numbers, then of course it's a later date. And if you add a negative number, you back up to a previous date. Okay, here's the formula equals C5 plus D5. And you may notice that my formulas are off by a column. I'm not quite sure how that happened. So it would be D5 plus E5. But this is the basic formula. Just the cell references are going to be one column over. So in this case, I would type it in equal. I'm going to click on my date. I'm going to put a plus sign. And I'm going to hit my negative number. And then I'm going to hit enter. And there's my date. And there's the serial number behind it. So another example is I'm going to start something on May 15th, 2020, and I want to know what the date is 365 days out. I want to know what the date is a year later. So in this case, I'm going to type in an equal sign, click on my date, type in a plus sign, hit my interval, and hit enter. And it's May 15th. Okay, and then there is this one where I'm going to start on June 30th, and I want to know what 30 days later is. I want to know what a month later is. So I'm going to hit equal, hit my date, hit my plus sign, hit my number of days, hit enter, and it's July 30th. Okay, so does that make sense? Can you think of some examples that you might be able to use either for work or a project around home? I mean, if you're moving, think about it. You can have a spreadsheet that backs up all the things you need to do before move dates, and that'll help you figure out your dates. So that's one example. I've seen people use it for weddings. I've seen people use it for projects around work, quite a bit. Here's the start date, here are the steps, and here are the dates that they're going to fall on. Okay, so you can do the same thing with subtraction. What this is going to give us is in this case, instead of having a date and a number of days, which I could do the same thing I had just done with addition with subtraction. But in this case, I want to know the number of days between two dates. So I've got a column of dates, and I have a column and this first column is start dates, and then I have a column of end dates. And one of these numbers is too big to show, so I'm going to make it a little wider. Okay, so in order to get the number of days, here are my formulas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract this start date number from the end date number. So the end date number comes first because it's the later date. So in this case, my formulas, they are correct. I don't know what happened over here, but it is K4 minus J4. So I'm lazy. I like to click visually. So I'm going to hit equal, and I'm going to click on my end date of January 30th, 2020, and then minus, and then the first, and it's 29 days. Okay, so in this other example, I am going to go backwards. So this is actually, it's a scenario you may run into, but let's go ahead and try it. So I'm going to type in equal. I'm going to click the end date, which is actually the earlier number, and then minus, and then this date, and it's negative 48 dates. Now, a negative number means it comes before the other one. So start date and end dates are probably the wrong labels for this particular scenario. So this is the type of thing where you say, okay, here is the start date of the project, or here's the end date of the project, and when do I need to do this step, and how many days before. And so my manager has given me this date that I need to start the step. How many days is that? And then you can decide if it's enough. Now, the other example, I'm going to say, okay, I need to be finished on December 31st, 2020. How many days do I have if I start on May 15th? And I have 230 days. It sounds like a lot, but it'll go quick. And then finally, you can cross years. So let's say I need to finish on January 1st, 2021, and I'm going to start on June 30th of this year. 185 days. Okay, does that make sense? So you have two different sets of scenarios. You can add dates or you can subtract dates. You can add or subtract to come up with an end result of a date, or you can add or subtract to come up with an end result of a number of days. So I'm hoping as I'm going through this that you can think of ways that you might be able to use this in your own spreadsheets and how you can apply this. And these are simple formulas. So they don't take a lot of finagling to understand. Now, next video, we're going to get into the functions And some of those are simple, and some of those you get a little bit more complex than this. So I hope to see you next time. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope that you will click the subscribe button so that you can keep up with the videos.